Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So today I got a fun and very unexpected episode for you guys this evening because over the weekend, a developer by the name of Kale was adding commits to the MAME GitHub for the Konami Viper. Now, if you haven't seen my channel for a while, you might not know, but I absolutely love the Viper hardware. I pretty much love anything Konami does in 3D, especially when it's bespoke arcade hardware. I've got a stack of these boards in my closet, and I've been doing everything I can to capture some of the games that have no captures on YouTube outside of the ones that I have done. Stuff like Code 1 Dispatch here is an awesome game that basically nobody has ever played, and up until the point in time that I put this capture on YouTube, there was no direct gameplay footage that existed. So to say, knowing that this is getting added into MAME and getting worked on is nothing short of spectacular, because there's so much fun to be had on the 3D side of arcade games in the 90s, and while MAME does an absolutely amazing job of covering a lot of it, Konami Viper's definitely been a blind spot. People have worked on it, the work has started and stopped. Stuff like Thrill Drive 2 here, one of the best racing games ever made in arcades in the 90s in my opinion, are just not things that you could play at home without owning expensive original hardware like I do. Well, here's the thing about the Viper hardware. As far as emulation is concerned, it is quite difficult. It has a lot of different chips on it. It's got a PowerPC chip as well as 3D effects graphics. It is a higher test board, and the higher you get in the 3D realm, the harder it is to accurately emulate these sort of things. So something like Thrill Drive 2 here was exclusively the domain of the arcade collector. If you didn't own a board, a super gun, or an arcade cabinet, there was absolutely no way you were going to play this game outside of emulation, which did not work yet. Well, the good thing is, now emulation does work. There's definitely an asterisk on that. This is an in-development build of MAME, and emulation for Viper is definitely not perfect. That is in no way, shape, or form a knock on the developer. This is just how these things work. They start by crawling until they run. But as we get into actual Thrill Drive 2 footage here, I captured this just about an hour ago on MAME. This is the game, and it is working. You can control it, you have audio. Of course, there's definitely some issues in the graphics and speed. This is not what the game would look like on real hardware, but before this weekend, it was impossible to actually really even get into game on Thrill Drive 2 or pretty much any other Viper game. Now, a bunch of the Viper games are showing signs of life in MAME, and a lot of them are playable, but let's take a look at real capture here for Thrill Drive 2. This is directly off my Konami Viper board into my upscaler and through my super gun. It is a very pretty looking game, and it definitely screams the 90s, but let's go side by side with real hardware in MAME. And it's obvious I don't need to tell you which one is which. This is relatively close for a lot of different things. There's some definite issues in the road textures, and obviously the player character's vehicle is not drawing whatsoever. I don't know what that's supposed to be there. It kind of looks like tank tracks, but as far as the colors are concerned, and again, don't forget my super gun does produce different colors, that skybox is working. A lot of the level geometry is there. Definitely some texture issues where they're not coming in correctly, but otherwise for a first sort of draft, this is absolutely impressive. I know it doesn't look perfect, and I know this is definitely not how you drive a vehicle in real life, but here, seeing this running for the first time on MAME and actually being playable and being able to complete a race is amazing progress, and that's why I'm always talking about preservation on the channel. I definitely can't code anything for the Viper, that is not my domain, but I can collect the real hardware and get real hardware captures, which sometimes can be useful for MAME developers. I sent MAME Hayes over some Hyper Neo Geo stuff so he could check it against his emulation. But the Viper is a very interesting board. It uses these compact flash cards with CF adapters going into a PCM-CIA slot, and it also has a real-time clock chip on it as well. There's a lot of different fun games, and a lot of the Viper games used motion controls. Something like mocap boxing here, again a capture from my original hardware, had two gloves that have XY potentiometers in them, as well as a big ring around the cabinet so it could track your movement in real time. It was basically like the Wiimote on the Nintendo Wii before that ever had a chance to exist. But I will say mocap boxing is running in the current emulator, and the attract mode is probably like 60 to 65% of the way there. There's definitely still some graphical glitches, but it seems like it's running at full speed compared to my capture. And again, just seeing any signs of life for the Konami Viper in MAME, it makes me so happy to see this, because as much as I can tell you the games are amazing to play, they're so much fun, and you should get the hardware, it is quite rare. A lot of it breaks, and it needs some maintenance with the real-time clock chips. So knowing soon, hopefully in the next year or two, we'll have full Konami Viper emulation in MAME means that these games are going to be available for basically anyone who wants to enjoy them to play. And I will say the sound emulation is quite good at this point in time. Listen, and I'll be right back.
Okay, let's see the replay. 3, 4.
Having played mocap boxing on my real hardware, I would say that the sound emulation here is extremely accurate. I have to go back and listen to it again because it's probably been a year and a half since I've actually plugged that board in, but it does seem like, to my memory at least, that it is working correctly. But not all of the controls here are in the original arcade board because I don't have that ring or the boxing gloves, which makes it very hard to play. And not all of the controls are currently wired up in MAME either. You do have some control over certain things and you can throw punches, but it's not 100% of the way there. But this is honestly a lot easier than having to try to find those boxing gloves and install a ring in your office. I've done a little bit of collecting for it. I hopefully will get a real hardware capture soon, but you'll see here this is what the arcade cabinet looked like with that motion tracking IR ring and the gloves. Moving over to Sergey, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is a game I played one time back in the day and I've never seen it since. It was not a success for Konami, and it is another one of those games that uses motion capture to be able to play. You hold a sword with some IR trackers in it and it reads all of your inputs. I do not have this game in my collection. I've been trying to find it for a while. I do have a home written CF card so I can boot it, but you get the attract screen here, and this is the first time I've seen any of this footage since I actually played the game back in the early 2000s, so it's so much fun just to even see this running on the screen. Definitely still some glitches, and just like mocap boxing, the controls are not 100% of the way implemented yet in the current MAME revision. And if you do want to test this, I use the nightly version that builds from GitHub, so you have to have basically at least the nightly from Friday into Saturday. I'm showing you guys this video on a Monday. And you'll see here in the attract sequence as well, this is basically how a lot of the Viper games worked. A bunch of them had different control schemes that would allow you to actually have your body movements read in real time. But the attract sequence here does look really good. It's definitely not the most graphically impressive thing you're ever going to see from the early 2000s, but it has that Konami look, feel, and vibe, and I absolutely do love that. And a lot of the graphics just are working. There's something about the textures on that dude's hair right there, but otherwise, it does look like and resembles a human being, and that is pretty impressive for emulation, especially considering something like Tsurki here didn't even work whatsoever before Friday evening. And it'll be really interesting to see what the developer Kale does next on the Viper driver. Maybe it'll be control based, we can start playing the games with imperfect graphics, or maybe he'll dedicate more time to getting these games looking correct and then deal with some of the implementations for the controls separately, because there's basically two types of Viper games: the ones that control on standard controls like an arcade stick or a wheel and racing setup, or games that use the motion controls. But Code 1 Dispatch here, a game that had basically been lost until I put that first capture up, you can get through the attract screen right here. Once you coin up and try to actually get into the game, you're going to see the options for your car select, or in this instance scene select, because every vehicle is set to a level. The minute you select a level though, it's going to go to a black screen and never get any further. Versus having real hardware, which I'm showing you here, the direct capture, this game is just so much fun, and I can't wait for people to actually be able to experience it. The Viper has an awesome library, some of my favorite games of all time from Konami, and outside of real hardware, it just hasn't been possible for anybody to actually play these games. So knowing that Viper is coming is always an exciting time. There's so many different 3D arcade boards out there that don't have perfect emulation or don't have working emulation. I'm so glad to see Viper finally going into that quasi-working category, and I'll definitely be updating these videos as more revisions come, not as much as I do for the Nintendo 64 core on Mister, but when we actually get better graphics or more playable games, I'll definitely check them out. But as you see Code 1 Dispatch here on real hardware, I do have a long play that I keep moving on the schedule, but I promise you I will do it before the end of the year. A lot of people are looking forward to that. But as we move over to Dark Darren's captures here, these next two clips were sent by a member of my Discord. He was able to play every single course and get a finish on each and every one of them. Obviously, this is not how the Konami Viper graphics should be drawn onto the screen, but the fact that you can play it, have fun, and actually see the ending of the game is wild, because outside of 72 hours ago, it was a complete impossibility. As we move over to real arcade hardware captures from my boards, you can tell we're in the same level. Obviously, this looks a lot better than the actual MAME emulation, but that's because this is finalized working hardware versus a work-in-progress MAME driver. But that is the fun about this. I can't wait to see what happens in 2024 for Viper, and I can't wait to make another video showing you the next bit of progress, because I absolutely love this hardware, and even though the games don't currently look great, the fact that you can play Thrill Drive 2 in MAME is incredible, because outside of this, unless you have real hardware like me, it was impossible. And I will definitely update this video, but it's so fun just to be able to see the progress here. There's so much fun games to be had on the Konami Viper, and I hope that all of my real hardware becomes obsolete, because MAME perfectly emulates each and every last game. If you want to try this for yourself, just grab the MAME nightly distribution off of GitHub, and if you need any help with this, you can just join my Discord. The link's down below. We have a Konami arcade channel specifically for real hardware, but also for helping people with emulation. But the Konami Viper is here in MAME today, and that is just absolutely amazing to see. It was a bonus video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. But definitely try it out. It is worth it, even in its current state. Bye-bye.